All right, let's jump right into a deep dive today. We're focusing on maybe a specific corner of the health and wellness market, the global milk calcium tablet market.
Hmm.
Now, this might sound a bit niche at first, but as we unpack the data we have here, this is from a report shared by Cognitive Market Research, you'll see, well, it tells a pretty compelling story about global health trends and consumer behavior too.
That's exactly right. That's our mission today. We want to guide you through this data, figure out how this specific segment is growing, pinpoint where that growth is, most intense around the world,
Right.
and really understand the underlying forces driving it all. Think of it like getting a shortcut to understanding a pretty significant health supplement trend that's shaping up for the next decade or so.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with the really big picture, the global numbers. What does the source tell us about the overall size and trajectory here?
Okay, so the report puts the global market value for these milk calcium tablets at $633.7 million. That was back in 2021.
$633.7 million.
Right. And looking ahead, it projects that number to reach $840 million by 2025.
Wow. Okay, so a solid increase in just a few years.
Right, that's the near-term momentum. But the really significant projection takes us out further to 2033.
And what's the number then?
By then, the market is forecast to swell to $1.476 billion.
Billion. Okay, so it's poised to more than double its 2021 value.
Exactly, more than double.
That's substantial growth over just a decade or so. How does the report frame that rate of expansion? Is there like a yearly average?
Yeah, they use the HAGR, the compound annual growth rate. Over that longer period, 2021 to 2033, it translates to a KGR of 7.3%.
7.3%.
Right. And just quickly for anyone listening, if AGR is a new term, think of it as the average yearly growth rate over that whole period, all smoothed out. It gives you a clearer picture of steady expansion.
Got it. So 7.3% globally. That indicates a pretty healthy, sustained demand increase for this specific product.
Definitely.
So what's behind this kind of consistent, strong growth? According to the source, what's the foundational why?
Well, the report points to several factors, all kind of interconnected. There's a rising global awareness about bone health issues,
Makes sense.
especially as populations get older.
Yeah.
And then there are these preventative wellness trends. More people are proactively looking for ways to maintain their health.
Right. Trying to get ahead of problems.
Exactly. It also ties into addressing dietary deficiencies in calcium, which exist in various populations. And then there's just the practical convenience. Taking a supplement in tablet form is easy.
Yeah, that makes intuitive sense. People are living longer, they're more health conscious, they want accessible ways to support their health. A calcium supplement from milk, it taps right into that,
Yeah.
especially with calcium's role in bone density being so well known.
Precisely. It's a product category that's directly benefiting from these huge global demographic shifts and evolving consumer attitudes towards health maintenance.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The global number is compelling, sure, but where is this growth actually happening? Let's break it down by region. How about we start with North America? What's the data show there?
Okay, North America, it's a significant market, no doubt. The report valued it at $263.6 million back in 2021.
263.6 million.
And it's projected to reach $562.3 million by 2033.
Okay.
So that gives it a regional KGR of 6.5%.
That's 0.5%. So it's growing, but interestingly, that's slightly below the global average you mentioned, the 7.3%.
That's right, it is.
And I assume the U.S. makes up the lion's share of that North American number.
It absolutely does. The United States is the largest single contributor there. Its market was $205.6 million in 2021.
Okay.
Forecast to grow to $423.4 million by 2033. That gives the U.S. an individual CGR of 6.2%.
6.2%. So the biggest market, but growing a little slower than even the regional average and definitely slower than global. How do Canada and Mexico stack up?
Yeah, this is where you see some interesting variations within the region. Canada is actually projected for faster growth than the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah, moving from $37.4 million in 2021 up to $86 million by 2033. That's a 7.1% CAGR for Canada.
Okay. Closer to the global average.
Right. And then there's Mexico. It actually shows the strongest momentum within North America. It started smaller, sure, $20.6 million in 2021, but it's projected to hit $52.9 million by 2033. That gives Mexico the highest CAGR in the region at 8.2%.
8.2% for Mexico. That's fascinating. So the U.S. is the biggest market, but Mexico's growth rate is faster than the North American average and even tops the global average.
Exactly.
That higher rate probably ties into maybe expanding healthcare access, rising health awareness there, aligning with those global Y factors, but perhaps
Yeah,
accelerated in Mexico.
precisely. The dynamics aren't uniform, even within one continent.
Mm.
So that's North America. Now, should we move across the pond to Europe?
Yeah, let's do Europe. What are the numbers there?
Europe's market was valued at $184.4 million in 2021. The projection takes it to $413.3 million by 2033.
Okay, so what's the CAGR for Europe?
That gives it a 7% CAGR overall for the region.
7%. So again, like North America's solid growth, but just slightly under that global 7.3% average pace.
Correct. And within Europe, just like North America, we see a real range of growth rates across different countries.
Okay, like what?
Well, take the UK market. It's projected from $29.7 million in 2021 up to $59.5 million by 2033.
Right.
That represents a 5.9% CAGR, which is actually the lowest rate among the major EU countries highlighted in the report excerpts we saw.
Huh. Any idea why the UK might be growing slower than, say, Germany or France in this specific market? The report doesn't say.
No, the report doesn't dive into the country-specific reasons for that variance, just gives the numbers. But speaking of Germany and France,
Yeah.
Germany is projected from $38.2 million to $80.2 million. That's a 6.4% CAGR. And France, pretty similar, from $30.1 million to $62 million, which is a 6.2% CAGR.
Okay, so UK lowest, then France, then Germany, all in that kind of 6-ish% range. What about Italy or Russia?
Italy shows a slightly faster rate. It goes from $18.6 million to $40.9 million, which is a 6.7% CAGR.
Okay.
And Russia is projected to actually match the global average at 7.3% CAGR, moving from $16.2 million up to $37.6 million.
Interesting. So a real mix there in Europe. Where's the fastest growth happening in Europe, according to this data?
Spain stands out. It's projected to grow from $11.8 million in 2021 to more than double, hitting $31.8 million by 2033. That gives Spain the highest CAGR in Europe at 8.6%.
8.6% in Spain. Wow, that's significantly faster than the UK or France. Again, it's interesting to see these pockets of higher momentum within what we might think of as mature European markets.
It certainly highlights that the drivers, whatever they are precisely, aren't uniform even within the continent. The report also noted a smaller market, Luxembourg.
Okay.
Projected growth there is from $2.4 million to $4.5 million, and its CAGR is 5.8%. That was the slowest growth rate listed across all the data points provided, actually.
Right.
And then the rest of Europe category, all the other countries combined, shows a healthier 7.7% CAGR.
Okay, so Europe growing steadily overall, Spain showing notable acceleration, UK a bit slower. But if we're looking for the real engine of this market's growth globally, where does the report point us?
Oh, well, that would definitely be Asia Pacific. This region is forecast to lead the world in growth rate for milk calcium tablets.
Okay, what are the numbers?
It was valued at $139.7 million back in...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
It was valued at $139.7 million back in 2021, and it's projected to really surge to $383 million by 2033.
Wow, almost $400 million. And the growth rate?
Its regional CAGR is the highest we've seen, 8.8%.
Almost 9% CAGR for the entire region. Which countries are driving that kind of rapid expansion? China, I assume.
China is definitely a major contributor to that regional dominance, yes. It's projected from $49.7 million up to $145.2 million by 2033. That's a strong 9.3% CAGR for China.
9.3%. Very strong.
But the real standout, according to this report, is India.
Okay, tell me about India.
India is noted as, well, one of the fastest rising health supplement markets globally, period. And it shows the highest individual country CAGR listed in these excerpts.
Higher than China's 9.3%.
Yep. It's projected to grow from $16.6 million in 2021 to an impressive $52.5 million by 2033. That's a robust 10% CAGR.
A 10% CAGR for India. Wow. Okay, that's huge. That's nearly double the rate projected for the UK and significantly faster than the global average. What do you think is behind that kind of acceleration in India, linking back to those general drivers?
Well, the report doesn't detail the specifics for India, but a 10% CAGR that strongly suggests a really potent combination of those foundational drivers we talked about.
Right.
In a market like India, it likely points to, a rapidly expanding middle class with more disposable income, growing urbanization, maybe opening up new distribution channels, definitely heightened awareness of bone health, perhaps driven by health campaigns or media,
Yeah.
and maybe even a strong cultural inclination towards preventative health or natural supplements. It all comes together.
Right. That connection between the global Y factors and a specific country rate like India's 10%, yeah, that really helps make the numbers concrete. What about other key places in Asia Pacific?
Sure. South Korea also contributes significantly. It's projected from $13.4 million up to $34.9 million by 2033. That's an 8.3% CAGR.
Still very strong.
Definitely. Australia shows a steady climb, too, forecast to reach $26 million by 2033, which is an 8% CAGR.
Okay.
And Southeast Asia, viewed collectively, is also strong, growing from $14.4 million to $40.2 million by 2033 at an 8.9% CAGR.
So yeah, Asia Pacific isn't just one or two countries lighting it up. It seems like broad-based, rapid growth across multiple dynamic markets there.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, let's look at Latin America next. How does that region figure in?
Latin America also presents a healthy outlook, though it's starting from a smaller total market size compared to North America, Europe, or Asia Pacific.
Right. Who's leading there?
Brazil is the regional leader. It's projected from $11 million in 2021 to $29.5 million by 2033. That's an 8.6% CAGR.
8.6% for Brazil. That's actually quite high, matching Spain's rate.
It is, yeah. Very solid growth.
And other countries in Latin America?
Argentina's projected from $4.9 million up to $12.2 million. Yeah. That shows a 7.8% CAGR.
Okay.
Colombia also performs well, increasing from $3.8 million to $9.7 million by 2033, which is an 8.2% CAGR.
Also strong.
And the report also just notes modest but steady growth for Peru and Chile, mentioning they'll reach $4.5 million and $5.4 million, respectively, by 2033, though the specific starting points and KGRs weren't in the excerpts we have.
Got it. Okay, and finally, let's touch on the Middle East and Africa. How does that region fit into this global picture?
This region also shows promising growth, particularly in specific markets, kind of aligning with the global trends.
Which markets stand out?
Egypt is mentioned as one of the standouts,
Yeah.
projected to grow from just $1.7 million in 2021.
Small start.
Yeah, very. But up to $4.7 million by 2033, that represents an 8.7% CAGR.
8.7%. Another high growth rate from a smaller base.
Exactly. Turkey is also notable, increasing from $4.4 million to $11.4 million. That's growing at a 7.8% CAGR.
Solid.
And then the rest of Middle East category is projected for steady growth, too, from $1.7 million up to $4 million by 2033, with a 7.3% CAGR, matching that global average exactly.
Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of numbers there. So stepping back, what does this all mean? We've looked at regions, countries. How do we synthesize this into a clear takeaway about this market's direction?
I think it means the global milk calcium tablet market is on a very clear, very significant upward trajectory. I mean, projection is for it to more than double in value in just over a decade.
Right.
And while that growth isn't perfectly uniform everywhere, it's pretty broadly distributed across the globe with, as we saw, particular hotspots.
And those hotspots offer real insights, don't they?
Absolutely. Asia-Pacific, as we discussed, is clearly forecast to be the engine of growth in terms of rate. Countries like India and China showing remarkable acceleration.
Yeah.
Likely fueled by that perfect storm of rising incomes, aging populations, and increasing health awareness. And while North America and Europe are larger markets right now, their growth is steady but generally a bit slower than the global average. Although even there, you have countries like Spain and Mexico showing faster momentum.
And it all circles back to those core drivers the report mentioned at the start.
Yes, exactly. This isn't just random market noise. It seems fundamentally tied to a world that is, objectively, getting older, more health conscious, more focused on preventative care. And where access to health products, like supplements, is expanding. And again, the sheer convenience of a tablet form makes it really accessible for a broad audience.
So for you listening, why should you care about this specific deep dive into milk calcium tablets? What's the relevance?
Well, if you're someone who tracks global health trends, or if you're interested in how consumer behavior around supplements is shifting, maybe you're even involved in the health and wellness industry yourself, whether that's manufacturing, distribution, marketing, advising. And this data gives you a really concrete example. It shows where demand is surging in a very specific yet globally relevant product category. It kind of illustrates the practical result of those broader health and demographic trends we always talk about.
Exactly. I think the main takeaway here is pretty undeniable. The milk calcium tablet market looks poised for a really significant global expansion. It's being propelled by these major health and demographic forces. Asia Pacific is leading the charge in growth rate, but there's strong, varied momentum across pretty much all continents.
hmm And, as we see specific health supplement markets like this one growing so rapidly, especially in emerging economies, and alongside aging populations everywhere, it does raise a kind of important question for us all to consider, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, how might this trend start to reshape our understanding of mass market health interventions? What are the bigger implications when specific nutritional supplementation becomes such a substantial global market force? Moving beyond just a niche product to maybe a mainstream health strategy for large chunks of the population.
That's a great point. What happens when supplementation at this scale becomes normal? Definitely something worth mulling over as these numbers continue to play out over the next decade.
Indeed. And we should mention, this deep dive was made possible by the detailed market outlook data provided to us by Cognitive Market Research.
Welcome to a deep dive. Today, we're digging into something that, well, might seem pretty specific at first glance. The milk calcium tablet market.
Right. It's a particular slice of the health and nutrition world.
Exactly. You might just think, oh, another pill. But the source material we're looking at, it's an excerpt from some recent market research. It actually shows a really fascinating picture.
It really does. I mean, what looks like a simple supplement on the surface is being pushed and pulled by these huge global trends.
Yeah, things like aging populations, this whole move towards clean or natural products, even just how we shop online now.
All of it feeding into this one market.
So our mission today is basically to unpack the key insights from this research. We want to understand how these big shifts play out in something as specific as a calcium tablet made from, well, dairy.
And that dairy part is crucial, isn't it? That's what defines this specific market segment we're talking about, sets it apart.
Okay, let's start with the growth. What's actually driving this market forward? The source points to a few really powerful forces. The first one, and maybe the biggest, ties right into demographics. Bone health and aging.
Oh, absolutely. This is huge. I mean, people are living longer everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, there's more focus on age-related bone issues, things like osteoporosis or just keeping your bones strong as you get older. It's a major wellness concern now.
And the source suggests milk calcium tablets have found a particular niche here. Why these specifically for older people?
Well, it seems to come down to how the body processes them. They're noted for having pretty high bioavailability.
Meaning they're easier to absorb.
Exactly, easier to absorb. And crucially for older adults who might be dealing with other health things or taking different meds, they often come with a lower risk of, say, digestive upset compared to some other calcium forms.
Ah, okay, so easier on the stomach maybe.
Yeah, that seems to be the perception. So it's that combination. Good absorption, but also maybe gentler.
Got it. Positioned as reliable, comfortable support for bone density, avoiding deficiency later in life. But like you said, it's not just about aging, is it?
No, definitely not. The second major driver the research highlights is this big focus on child nutrition.
Right. Parents wanting the best start for their kids.
Precisely. Parents are, increasingly tuned in to making sure kids get enough calcium during those really critical growth years. It's a key worry for many.
And the market's responding to that directly.
Yeah, you see it in the products. They're making tablets specifically for kids, often flavored, chewable.
Making it less of a chore.
Exactly. Trying to make it more appealing, almost like a little treat. That convenience and better taste are massive for making sure kids actually take them regularly. Especially important if maybe they don't drink a lot of milk or get enough calcium otherwise.
Makes sense. Turning a need into something easier to manage. Okay, and the third driver, this one feels like part of a much bigger trend we see everywhere.
That's the one, the huge demand for natural products, especially in nutraceuticals, so supplements and functional foods.
The whole clean label idea moving into the vitamin aisle.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Functional foods.
The whole clean label idea moving into the vitamin aisle.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Consumers are really looking closely at ingredients now. They want transparency, and there's this definite lean towards things perceived as natural, less processed, from sources they recognize.
And milk calcium fits that mold.
Perfectly, according to the source.
That's it.
Because it comes from dairy, it kind of slots right into that narrative. It's presented as this natural alternative compared to, say, purely synthetic calcium compounds.
Leveraging that trust people might have in a familiar food-based source. Okay, so that gives us a good sense of the tailwinds, but this is where it gets interesting for me, the challenges. What are the roadblocks or, the restraints this market is up against?
Well, ironically, the very thing that makes it appealing to some, the dairy source, is a big barrier for others. Dairy allergies and lactose intolerance. That straight away limits who can even consider these products.
Right, so there's a built-in cap on the potential market size.
There is. And it means manufacturers in this specific space always have that challenge. They're potentially losing customers to other options that are dairy-free.
And speaking of other options, that's another major hurdle, isn't it? The sheer competition.
Oh, absolutely. Huge restraint. This market isn't isolated. Milk calcium tablets are going head-to-head with a whole range of alternatives. You've got plant-based calcium.
Right from algae or something?
Yeah, things like that. Or marine sources like coral calcium. And then, of course, all the synthetic options, calcium citrate, calcium malate, you name it.
And these aren't just copies. They serve different niches, right?
Exactly. Plant-based is obviously key for vegans. Some synthetics might offer, I don't know, different absorption rates, or maybe they're cheaper. The source actually mentions milk calcium losing some ground in certain areas, where these alternatives are either more readily available or just marketed more aggressively.
Wow, so that competitive pressure is really strong.
It really is. Being natural isn't always enough on its own.
Okay, and the third restraint is kind of linked to the supplement itself, how it works.
That's right. The risk of oversupplementation. Calcium is essential, no doubt. But taking way too much, especially if you're not guided by a doctor, can actually cause problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, the research mentions things like a higher risk of kidney stones, constipation, potentially even some cardiovascular concerns, although that's more complex.
That must make consumers a bit more careful, and maybe regulators too.
It does seem to. Consumers are getting smarter, more cautious. They might seek advice or look for products with really clear, maybe lower dosages. And yeah, regulators are definitely keeping a closer eye on labeling, on recommended daily amounts. That adds another layer of complexity for the companies making these.
Okay, so we've got these strong drivers pushing things forward, aging, kids' health, natural demand, but also these significant breaks allergies, fierce competition, safety concerns. How does all this play out? What trends are shaping where this market is actually going?
Well, one really clear trend is innovation in the product itself, specifically adding complementary nutrients.
You mean like adding vitamin D or other things into the same tablet?
Exactly that. Formulations are increasingly including vitamin D3, which is crucial for calcium absorption, but also things like vitamin K2, magnesium.
Which all work together for bone health, right? They're not just random extras.
Precisely. It creates a more sort of holistic bone support product in one go. That makes it more attractive, especially for people who might need multiple nutrients like the elderly again or pregnant women. It's about boosting the effectiveness and offering more value.
So the tablet itself is getting smarter, basically. What's another big shift in how the product is presented?
That would be the move towards new formats, moving beyond just the standard, hard pill.
Like the chewables for kids we mentioned.
Yes, but it's much broader now. Think gummies, chewables for adults, maybe even melts. It's all about making them taste better and just improving the whole experience of taking them.
For everyone, not just kids.
Yeah, definitely for adults too, especially, say, older people who might find swallowing large pills difficult. The source uses this great phrase: it transforms taking your calcium from a chore into a tasty, reliable habit.
I like that. If it's easier or nicer to take, you're more likely to stick with it.
Exactly. It boosts adherence, which is obviously key for any supplement to work.
That makes total sense. Okay, and one last big trend. How are people actually buying these things now? Is that changing?
Oh, massively. Direct-to-consumer DTC and just general e-commerce are becoming really, really influential.
So brands selling straight to people online, skipping the pharmacy shelf.
That's a big part of it. Brands, maybe smaller or more specialized ones, can use websites, social media, maybe influencer campaigns, even subscription boxes to reach customers directly.
Cutting out the middleman.
Right. And it allows for maybe more personalized advice or product bundles. Plus, it just taps into the massive convenience of online shopping that, let's face it, most of us expect now. It's opening up new ways to find these products and reaching health-focused consumers right where they are, which is often online.
Okay, so let's try and tie this all together. We've got these fundamental drivers, aging populations needing bone support, parents focusing on kids' nutrition, this general desire for natural stuff. Then you have the counterforces, dairy allergies limiting the audience, intense competition from all sides, and worries about taking too much. And the market is reacting with smarter formulations, easier to take formats, and selling directly online. So based on the source, what's the big picture takeaway? Is this market growing, shrinking, just changing?
The overall picture painted is one that's really dynamic, but actually quite promising, despite those hurdles. The constant need to innovate, adding those extra nutrients, making gummies, finding customers online seems to be keeping milk calcium tablets relevant. They're adapting to stay a significant player in the global nutrition scene.
So why should you, listening to this, care about the milk calcium tablet market? Well, maybe you're thinking about your own bone health or your kids. Maybe we're just trying to navigate that confusing supplement aisle and wondering what's behind the labels.
Yeah, or perhaps you're just interested in how these big global shift, demographics, consumer taste, technology actually impact real products on the shelf.
Right. It shows how something like the preference for natural or the rise of Amazon doesn't just affect, tech or fashion, but filters right down to how a specific vitamin supplement is made and sold.
It really underscores how companies in the health space have to constantly evolve. They need to deeply understand what consumers want and figure out how to overcome the inherent limitations of their products to stay competitive.
Okay, so to quickly recap the core takeaways. The milk calcium tablet market is fundamentally driven by essential health needs, bone density, especially as we age, and foundational nutrition for children. This is boosted by that strong consumer pull towards natural supplements.
But it faces real challenges. Dairy intolerance is a barrier. Competition from plant-based and synthetic calcium is fierce, and there are genuine concerns about getting the dosage right to avoid oversupplementation.
And the response? Innovation. Adding complementary nutrients like D and K2, creating more user-friendly forms like chewables and gummies, and leveraging digital channels to reach consumers directly.
It's a great example of a specific market reflecting these much bigger forces at play.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder, building on what we've discussed. Given this increasing global focus on personalized health solutions, the ever-expanding variety of calcium alternatives out there, and this clear market push towards making supplements easy and multifunctional, how much longer can milk calcium tablets rely primarily on just being natural and dairy-derived to stand out? Or will their future success depend almost entirely on these kinds of added innovations, the extra nutrients, the convenience factors to really compete?
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.